A terrifying infection has breached our world, leading people to a painful and agonizing death. It is airborne and instantly transmitted, wiping out nearly the entire population of Earth. For friends, brothers Brian and Danny and their girlfriends Bobby and Kate are driving a stolen car to a place called Turtle Beach, where they hope to wait out the epidemic. They avoid major highways, which are considered the most dangerous. On an empty road, an SUV suddenly appears in front of them. A man introducing himself as Frank claims that he and his daughter Jody have run out of gas and offers to trade food and water for fuel. When the girl wearing a respirator appears at the window, it becomes clear that she is sick. The friends decide to leave as quickly as possible, but Frank, enraged, manages to strike the car window with a wrench. However, while maneuvering around obstacles, they damage the car's engine on a rock, and after a few miles, it comes to a stop. Danny and Bobby suggest negotiating with Frank, despite Brian and Kate thinking it's too dangerous. Realizing staying on the road is too risky, Danny proposes they go back and take Frank's SUV. Armed with gloves, masks and fuel canisters, the friends head back. Brian points a gun at Frank, demanding the vehicle, but Frank reveals they recently caught a radio signal. Scientists nearby have opened a pharmaceutical center where the sick are being successfully treated with a new serum. Frank plans to take his daughter there. Danny comes up with an idea. They place Frank and his daughter in the trunk, sealing it tightly with plastic, and thoroughly disinfect the car's interior. The group takes the remaining supplies from their broken-down car, and Danny grabs a childhood photo of himself and his brother. Along the way, Bobby plays with Jody through the plastic barrier, and Brian jokes with her, only to get punched in the face. The car almost veers off the road. Frank presses against the plastic, creating a small tear in the barrier. In horror, Kate bolts out of the car, and Danny follows her. On the way, they spot a car that had gone off the road. They plan to siphon its fuel, but upon looking inside, they find the body of an infected driver. Danny reaches for the key. As the gas tank is locked, the man's body, covered in sores and ulcers, suddenly starts moving. In his final agonizing moments, he can barely raise his hand. The guys quickly siphon the fuel and leave immediately. Night falls and they decide to camp under the open sky. While Brian and Bobby retreat to a tent, the others settle around the campfire. Danny shares that they are headed to Turtle Beach, a place they frequented in their childhood. There are practically no people there, and they hope to take shelter in an abandoned hotel and wait out the aftermath of the epidemic. Their peaceful evening is suddenly interrupted by the sound of gunfire in the distance. Soon, they notice two cars speeding toward them. Brian quickly extinguishes the fire so their camp won't be seen. The group freezes, watching as an armed man steps out of one of the jeeps and shoots the other driver. Afterward, the unknown assailant disappears. The next day, they drive past the body of the shot man, who has a sign attached to him. As they continue, they arrive at an abandoned town, seeing empty streets and the bodies of infected people tightly packed into plastic disposal bags. They reach a school where a relief center for the infected is open. Bobby decides to stay with Jody, while the others explore the building. However, the center turns out to be almost empty. In one of the rooms, they find a doctor who has become infected and is now in an isolation box with a dozen children. The man explains that the vaccine brought to their center only holds off the infection for 3 days, after which the disease strikes again with renewed force. Weakened and hopeless, the doctor begins preparing a lethal mixture of bromine and potassium for himself and his patients. Frank, unwilling to let the doctor and the others die, pulls out a gun and orders him to stop. After the doctor shares that the city no longer has electricity, and that gas and food supplies are almost exhausted, Frank begs him to save his daughter Jody. However, the doctor responds that it's impossible. He can only ease her suffering. Frank, having lost his last bit of strength, lowers the gun, allowing the doctor to end his and the others' suffering. Meanwhile, Bobby, who stayed with Jody, tries to cheer her up, but the girl suddenly starts gasping for air. Panicking, Bobby puts on gloves and a mask to enter the isolation room and help her. Jody begins coughing up blood, and droplets land on Bobby's face. When the others return, Bobby quickly replaces the plastic cover, trying to hide what happened. Frank notices that his daughter is weak and lying in the car. When Jody asks to use the bathroom, Frank, fearing they might be left behind, sends her alone but soon realizes she is too weak. He picks her up and asks the others to wait. But as soon as they step away from the car, Brian starts pulling their belongings out. Danny tries to stop his brother, asking for Bobby's help, but they remain resolute. Frank does everything he can to distract his daughter so she doesn't see the car driving away. While the group takes care of the car, Bobby discreetly disposes of her stained jacket, hoping the others won't find out about her possible infection and abandon her. They decide to spend the night in a luxurious hotel. Brian inspects the pool and comes across the body of an infected person. almost falling into the water. Fortunately, his brother helps him climb out. While playing on the golf course, Brian falls out of a golf cart and asks Bobby for help getting up. She hands him a club instead of her hand, fearing to infect him. However, Brian decides to joke, pulls her close, and kisses her. But she pushes him away and leaves without noticing his strange behavior. Brian, along with his brother and Kate, continues to have fun, breaking hotel windows with golf balls, unaware that another group of survivors is using the hotel as a refuge. At night, Danny and Kate notice flashlight beams and hear voices in the hotel lobby. They run to the kitchen, grab knives, and try to hide. An armed man in protective gear enters, notices the missing knives, and quickly captures the intruders. Outside, Brian notices a person in a protective suit and attacks him, tearing off his mask. At that moment, a few more people exit through the doors. They point their weapons at Brian, forcing him to surrender. The strangers accuse them of killing Larry, whose body was found floating in the pool. They order the girls to strip to ensure they're not infected. Finding signs of infection on Bobby's body, the men order the group to leave immediately, taking almost all of their gas supplies. The next day, there is silence in the car. During a stop, Kate asks Danny to talk to his brother about leaving Bobby behind for their own survival. Understanding that his brother is right, Brian asks her to step out of the car. He leaves her with some supplies and tells her to head to the nearest town on foot. Ignoring her tearful pleas, the young man gets in the car and drives away. Their fuel is almost gone. Seeing a car approaching, Brian blocks its path. Danny tries to negotiate with two women in the car about gas, but they reply that they're also running low and plan to leave. Suddenly, Brian pulls out a gun and shoots the driver. He orders the passenger to get out of the car, but she fires back. Brian mortally wounds her. Kate calmly goes to siphon gas from the car, while Brian grabs a canister to join her. But Danny, shocked by his brother's cold-blooded actions, lunges at him. Brian pins the boy against the car and accuses him of hypocrisy, yelling that he has to do all the dirty work for their survival, while Danny sits back, debating moral values. With nothing to say, Danny takes the canister and heads for the gas. The three continue their journey. Kate takes the wheel due to Brian's injury. Spotting a house by the road, Danny asks Kate to pull up. He wants to find medicine to treat his brother's wound. All the windows and doors are boarded up, except for a small window on the second floor. Danny climbs inside and finds an infected old woman with a shotgun, dead in her chair. He hears a noise from below, and when he goes down, he disgustedly notices a large dog devouring someone's remains. Danny grabs antibiotics from a side table but accidentally attracts the dog's attention. The enraged dog lunges at him, but he manages to fend it off. Covered in the dog's blood, he exits and begins to treat Brian's wound. To his horror, Danny discovers signs of infection on his brother's leg, likely contracted after kissing Bobby. He tells Kate everything but can't bring himself to abandon Brian. The three continue their journey, isolating Brian in the car trunk. By nightfall, they decide to camp by an open fire. Fearing abandonment, Brian takes the car keys. When he falls asleep, Danny and Kate quietly take the keys and gun, but Brian wakes up and pleads with them not to leave him. It turns out he swapped the keys, so they can't leave without him. In desperation, the older brother, unwilling to die a painful death, provokes Danny, who makes a tough decision. Danny bids his brother farewell forever. Afterward, he and Kate get in the car and soon reach Turtle Beach. Looking at familiar places, Danny realizes that this place will never be the same without his brother. He stares at the beach with sadness, knowing he will now feel only loneliness. And thus, the movie ends. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe to our channel.